Kendrick Lamar, Beyonce, Harry Styles, Rosalia, Mitski, Earl Sweatshirt, Taylor Swift. So many great albums came out in 2022, and today I'm going to be sharing my favorite albums top 10 list of 2022. Let's get into it. 2022 was a great year for music. Not as good as 2020. That year was crazy, but quite close. 2022 had a bunch of debut albums that came out that were really great. A lot of mainstream artists also released like really great projects, but mostly what makes this 2022 a great year for music is the fact that we had a bunch of follow-up albums for new upcoming artists. We have Black Country Road releasing their second album, we have Dry Cleaning releasing their second album, and we have the Backseat Lovers also releasing their second album. So yeah, we have a bunch of like follow-up albums of new upcoming artists this year, and that is why we should appreciate 2022. So without any further explanation, I'm gonna talk about my top 10 albums of 2022. Let's get into it. My number 10 spot goes to Guard Dog by Searows. It's an indie folk record composed by the artist Alec Duckert from the Pacific Northwest, and what makes this album really great is the fact that it's a debut album. And for a debut album, it's really great. I feel like lyrically it's very deep and like has a lot of depth. Actually, also it reminds me a lot of Sling by Clairo in terms of production, also a bit of Biba Doobie as well. But I feel like in terms of lyrics, it has like some darker undertones, something like Daughter. Great artist, great songwriter. Alec Duckert, the creator of this album, actually made a playlist called Songs I Wish I Wrote. So if you want to like understand all the influences that came out for this record, you should just visit that playlist because it has a lot of like very important data. We have Phoebe Bridgers, we have Kristen Lee Hudson, some Big Thief, Charlie Hickey, so you can definitely see all those influences that Alec wanted to show in this, you know, brand new album. My number 9 goes to American Heartbreak by Zach Bryan. If I had to put any country album in this, you know, top 10, it just had to be Zach Bryan. It had to be Zach Bryan. What Zach Bryan has done for country music, it's unbelievable. Like, he makes so much music, and I've actually heard he's like making another album for like next year. I don't know if that's totally true, but that's what I've heard. But he still makes so much music, like he releases so much stuff. This new album by Zach Bryan is like 2 hours long, so it has like 30 songs in this thing. That is impressive, like no other way to put it. And you know, every single song is really great. I feel like as a country singer, even if he's made like albums before, this is like his third like complete record. This one is like his true debut because it shows his identity as a country singer more than, you know, their previous projects. So, you know, just for soul like appreciation and how much effort he put into this record just to make 2 hours of content, that's why he deserves this 9th spot. Number 8, I'm Not Sorry, I Was Just Being Me by King Hannah. This is the debut album of the duo composed back in 2017, so they have made music before, like a couple of EPs, but this is their first like fully fleshed out official LP, album, whatever. So it's like the first thing they like get known of. The duo describes themselves as a meditative pop, also like naming artists like Yola Tango or maybe like Sharon Van Etten. You can definitely see those influences coming through this record. So, you know, it reminds me a lot of like that Warpaint EP from like 2015. So it's quite production heavy. The production is very dark, it's very deep. So you can definitely see a bunch of like different like influences and like different like, you know, production values in terms of voice, in terms of like electronics. So, you know, I feel like it's very carefully crafted, and that's why this album is my number 8 spot. The number 7 spot goes to Stumpwork by Dry Cleaning. This is the band's second album, following up their first record called New Long Leg. And actually, New Long Leg was like my top 3 album of 2021 from last year. So I had a lot of expectations, you know, towards this new album that was coming out. And I'm happy to say this album is actually really, really great. It's very similar in terms of style. It still has like that sardonic post-punk type of production too. But I feel like more than post-punk, this is art punk, because I like to, you know, put Dry Cleaning in the same line as Black Country Road or even like Squid as well. They're just a bit softer. I feel like they have some influences in like slow rock as well. But, you know, I think like post-punk can mean so many things, and it just doesn't really, you know, shows any sense of like description now. So yeah, I'll call this a art punk slow rock album that came out in 2022. It's very vibrant, it's elastic. I feel like it's full of groove, and the band has like a very hardcore personality, you know, despite being a very quite like a slowcore band anyway. So that's, you know, that's very cool. Number 6, God Save the Animals by Alex G. Alex G is one of my favorite artists of all time, so you could say I'm a little bit biased, but actually, if I was that biased, I would put this in my number 1, and it's not. It could perfectly be though, because every song on this album is really, really great. I feel like, you know, it's a classic Alex G album. It has like that very like simplistic style of lyrics and, you know, like meaning. But in terms of production, it's very broad and very complex. I feel like every song is very different from one another. So it shows like a very diverse and like versatility in Alex G that we haven't quite seen before, and that's very special. I do have some like, you know, like favorites anyways. I feel like Runner is a great song, obviously. That's like the fan favorite. I loved Blessing as a single. I think is the best one. And Cross the Sea, I feel like it's an underrated song. It's really great. All those 3 songs are very different from each other. So you're gonna see how Alex G is really trying to like change the way he produces music, but also keeping that like DIY mechanics that he's always had. And that's great. Number 5, Waiting to Spill by the Backseat Lovers. I made a review of this album actually like not so long ago, so you could just go and check it out. But, you know, I feel like in a brief summary of what I know about this record, it's an indie rock album, but I feel like it's very important because it not only has like indie rock songs, but it also has like some indie folk ballads, and they all are kind of like surrounded in like this Midwestern like style of production. So that's really special because I feel like it shows a different side of what indie rock can be, and the Backseat Lovers are really great like showing that. I feel like they're very great not only in terms of like production, but lyrically speaking, they're very, you know, very specific, very careful with what they want to talk about. And that's why this album is on my top 5 of this list. Actually, a lot of people have actually put this album in their top 1. You know, I've heard a bunch of people saying how this is the best album of the year, and I wouldn't be surprised by that. My number 4 spot goes to Dragon New War Mountain I Believe You by Big Thief. Now, this one is undebatable. This is band's like 5th LP so far. This is defined as a double LP, so it's like very lengthy. But what makes this very impressive is the fact that they actually made like 45 songs, like fully fleshed out, complete songs for this album in like a span of like 5 months. That is crazy to think about. Only 20 songs made it to the album, but that's still a very lengthy amount of songs, and all of them are really great. I feel like I've never been disappointed by any project that Big Thief have like, you know, made. So that's, you know, that's grateful, that's great. And also it still shows that Adrian Lenker as a songwriter is one of the best things that ever happened to the music industry. So yeah. Number 3, Bummer Year by Good Looks. Now we jump to our top 3, the best of the best, and we start with a very special album, Good Looks by Bummer Year. This is a record that I started listening very recently, you know, so I wasn't aware of the band's existence at all. Really not that hard to say because it's basically like their debut album, and nobody really talked about this record. They describe themselves as like a blue-collar political indie rock band, which totally checks out. They share some influences with Replacements, which is a great band, and also like some riffs of The War on Drugs, also a great band. Pretty spot on. I like how artists define themselves with their influences of other artists and not just like a very like pretentious definition of themselves, because it shows a lot of like, you know, like they don't have much ego, and that's always awesome. Bummer Year reminds me a lot of Backseat Lovers' new album because it's an indie rock album anyways, and it shows a lot of like indie folk, you know, kind of like influences across the board. But the difference is that this one is, well, a debut album, but also because it shows a lot of that Texas influence, because the band is from Austin, Texas, I think. So you can definitely see the like country-ish, folky-ish style of production. As an indie rock album, it shows a lot of Texas influence in terms of religion and nature and industry, and it's very deep in meaning. So that's why this album is my top 3. Number 2 goes to Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. Yep, the best band in the world, the best band in the moment, I think so. Releasing arguably the best album of the year, or the best albums of the past decade. What Black Country New Road are doing for the music industry is absolutely unbelievable. Ever since they released their first like LP called For the First Time, I just fell in love with them immediately. You know, songs like Sunglasses or Track X definitely show how much effort I put into the songs. I have never listened to a project like this before. I think it's really, really great. And if you were to listen to any album of this list, you should actually listen to this one instead of my number 1. I feel like, objectively speaking, Black Country New Road have the best album of the year, like objectively. This is not my number 1, it's just for personal like reasons only. But yeah, this is honestly the best album of the year. My number 1 spot goes to 1111 by Pinegrove. As you've heard before, I had a lot of problems sort of like figuring out what was my first like album of the year. I was constantly jumping back and forth between Pinegrove and Black Country New Road. So we could just make like a technical tie between both of them. They're both my number 1s albums of the year. But the reason why I put Pinegrove above Black Country New Road is just for pure personal reasons. I feel like this album came out earlier this year, so I had a lot of time to listen to it, and it helped me a lot to get through the lowest moments of my life. So the only reason this is my number 1 is because it basically saved my life. So yeah, there's that. 1111 is a very special record that I will always keep close to my heart. So that's why this is my best album of the year. This was my top 10 list of the albums of the year. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel, maybe leave a comment. If you have a different list or a different opinion, you're welcome to just write it in the comments. And yeah, that's basically it. I hope we can keep in touch.
Ready for the mosh pit, Shaka Bra.